So that was the pencil tool. Now let's work with the brush tool. The brush tool works a lot like the pencil tool, but you can also assign characteristics or draw with characteristics like thicks and thins. Like Photoshop, all of the panels are under Window, Brushes. So let's pick one, the 5-point oval, and you can see you can draw with thicks and thins, and if we create a closed path still, let's make sure it's selected, and let's assign it a fill. I've already shown you how you can use any drawing tool in Illustrator to modify a path if it's selected. If you're trying to draw a new path right next to an already selected path, you can sometimes accidentally alter the selected path instead. If this happens, just undo. You can make sure this doesn't happen by deselecting the previous path before trying to draw a new one. So if you've drawn a path and you want to draw a new path right next to it instead of modifying the current path, a good shortcut is to hold down the Command key. And when you have a drawing tool like the brush, if you hold down the Command key, it turns into an arrow, so I can go click and deselect, then let go of the Command key and keep painting. I'll select that path and give it a fill also. Now I want to go back to the brushes panel again and talk about two things. One, when something is selected, you can alter the characteristic. I'll make this really big so you can see. You can alter the characteristic by selecting a different kind of brush. Second thing is, why aren't there very many kinds of brushes? Well, all of the brush libraries are under this right here. Click Open Brush Library, and let's pick Artistic and Chalk and Charcoal, for instance. So we have all of these extra brushes, and simply by clicking on a selected object, we could give it those characteristics. And there are tons of things underneath in the brushes library, in the swatches library, and of course in the swatches you can save a new swatch that you've created just like before, and that's going to be really handy when we create a pattern for our project. So let's select all these and hit delete. By the way, the blob brush down here paints with fills rather than strokes, so make sure you don't accidentally select the blob brush instead of the regular brush that paints with paths. So the pen tool can be frustrating at first, but there's only a few things you have to remember, so really stick with it. And I'll go click, I'll go click, click, click. So I made a little base for the cactus just by clicking, making straight lines. Now the next thing I'm going to do is make a curved line that kind of curves like this. And what I'll do to do that, it's a straight path, and I want to turn it into a curved path, so I'm clicking and holding down, click, but not letting go. And then I pull in the opposite direction of the curve, and I get these little Bezier handles. It's like a little crowbar that bends your path into a shape. And this takes a little practice, but stick with it because it's really valuable. This is how the pen tool works in Photoshop as well. So once I have a little curve, I let go. These are non-printing. They're just handles to help you move your object. Okay, so now I want it to make a straight path. If I click another time, it'll just think it's continuing the same curve, but instead, to make a straight path, I go over the dot, and you can see I get this little greater than sign, that little tick mark next to the pen. So I go click right on the point, so I've changed it to a straight path. So then the next thing I do is go click and make a straight path. Then I go over here, and I want a curved path for the top, so I'm clicking and holding down and letting go. Now I want to make a straight path out of a curve, so I have to go over it, the point, and go click and make a straight path. So to make a straight path out of a curved path, you go over the point and you click. To make a curved path out of a straight path, click. Then you just click, hold, and pull in the opposite direction. Okay, so now I want a straight path, click, go up here, click, go over here, click and pull down to make a curve. Don't give up on this, it can be frustrating at first. Then I want to change the curved path to a straight path, click. and go down here and go click. Then I want to make another cactus part over here, so it's going to be a curve. So I'm going to click, hold down, and pull in the opposite direction. Then I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. Even though I want a top, I want to not continue this curve arc. I want to make a new curve, right? So you do the same thing as with a straight path. So I'm going over it, that point, click, and going over here and pulling in the opposite direction. Then I'm going over here, starting a new curve. So I'm going to go click and go over here, and I'm going to connect the beginning to the end and make a new path. But I haven't let go yet. I'm pulling in the opposite direction, and I'm pulling and making a cactus. Okay. And again, you could use the smooth tool. You could use the pencil tool. You can correct anything that's not exactly like you want it, right? So I'm going to draw with the pencil tool and change these edges a little bit, or I could smooth them with the smooth tools. Then I could add little spiky marks in the middle. But for now, I'll just now give it a fill, click, click, of green, and I made a cactus. The new curvature tool is underneath the regular pen tool. It looks like the pen tool, but with a little squiggle. And you put your mouse over it, it says curvature tool. If you select that, you can grab any path and it makes a new point, and you can just stretch. And it's an easy way to alter a path that's selected, right? And if you click in the middle of a path, it adds an extra point, a new point, automatically. We're going to create a simple cartoon face out of individual shapes and paths, and then group those shapes together. I'm going to create a closed path. I'm going to create a little face like this, and I'm going to create a top of the head that's going to be completely covered. So it's a little face with ears. And then I'm going to give it a kind of a flesh tone here. Okay. And then I'm going to give it blonde hair. So in order to give it blonde hair and not change this path and create another path that's on top of it, then I can hold down the Command key and click to deselect it. So now I'm free to do some blonde hair. I'll just go over here and make some blonde hair, and I'll do a spiky hair. And then I can give this a characteristic. I'll click on this for the shape and give it a yellow color. Why don't we give it a green color? Again, I could change it as long as the path is selected. I can change it here anytime I want. Then I'll hold down the Command key and click to deselect, and I'll draw a t-shirt. Okay, so again, we could redraw the path if we didn't like something, or reshape it. Okay, and let's give the t-shirt a color of red for the fill. So now let's do a neck. So I will deselect, and then I'll draw a neck that's going to fit into the shirt. And this will look weird at first, but I'm making a closed path again, connecting the beginning to the end. And I'm going to make a brown color, but I'm going to make it darker than the flesh color. And I could use the eyedropper tool to sample, but I'll just go ahead and make a slightly darker color. Okay, now it looks funny because it's in front, right? But we created a closed path, and in this case we want it to go all the way back. So what would we do? Object arrange, send to back, and now it's in back. It's easy, right? Let's deselect and make an arm over here, and this time I will use the eyedropper and sample that color, so it's the same. And object arrange, send to back, and then I could now go to the pencil tool over here and draw again, and make a simple shape over here. And I'll correct that because that looks awfully goofy. Again, I could use the smooth tool if I was going to take some more time with it. And this time I can sample with it still selected and then get that color. And what do? Object arrange, send to back. So these are all closed paths where they are connecting the beginning to the end of the path, and I've assigned them fills. So now if I wanted to make some open paths just to make a little cartoon face, then I could go over here. Maybe I'll change the width to something slightly smaller, and I can make a face. So now I was going to use little tiny circles. The shape tool, I'll hold down shift and I'll make perfect circles for eyes. Doesn't matter where they are right now. So I want a stroke of none, but a fill of black. Or I could go click, click, and drag it to black. Okay. And then I can use the arrow keys, the same video game arrow keys on the keyboard, and I'm tapping the left arrow to scoot it into the right place. Right? So that way I don't have to zoom in and try to grab the path. Now, if I hold down Alt Option, this is selected and I'm holding down Alt Option, I can drag out a perfect copy and then let go of Alt Option after I let go of the shape. So I made a perfect copy, and now with that copy selected, I can hit the arrow key and move it into the right place and then deselect. So I've created a person, and let's say I want to be able to create this person and manipulate it as a single element, place it in a background and scale it or something like that, instead of having to move individual elements, right? So to do that, I need to select all the shapes. I could do that in several ways. I could hold the Shift key down, which I am now, and click on various shapes. I can instead drag across and select the shapes. And since I want to select everything that I've made so far, I could also do Select All and select everything, and then do Object Group. Object Group. So when you have a bunch of shapes that you've created and you select them, you can group them. And this will come in handy when you're making your Illustrator document. So now you can see that I have this and it operates as a single unit. So that's pretty handy. And you could scale it, for instance. I'm holding down Shift and I could scale it down or move it around, you know, or send it to the back or backwards or front or forward. So now it operates as a group. And if you want to ungroup, you can. If you decide later you want to manipulate individual elements with ease, then you can go to Object Ungroup. Now everything is its own separate element again. So let's select everything and hit delete and get rid of our guy. And I want to show you one more thing. You can create compound shapes. Window, Pathfinder, and in the Pathfinder you can combine shapes in different ways. So let's start with a rounded rectangle tool and drag, and let's hit the down arrow and make the curves less severe than mine are, at least, until you get to something like this. And draw out a little rectangle, and this is going to be the body for a kind of cartoon car. Then let's build another path like this for the top part of the car. Okay, so you want to select both of the shapes that we've created, and if you go to this, Unite, it's the first thing, click, and you can see we created a compound path out of the two shapes. So you could use any combination of tools, draw two separate shapes, and combine them using the Pathfinder. Then I'm going to select the Ellipse tool, which if we hold down the Shift makes perfect circles. And I'm going to make a circle. And then I'm going to move it into place. And then I'm going to hold Alt Option and drag a copy. And leave it here. And then if I select everything and go to minus front, the second one, the wheels are in front because they're the last things I drew. Click. Now I have little wheel holes. Click to deselect. This time I'll use the rectangle tool a couple times. Make a shape here. Then a shape here. And with everything selected, minus front again, and I made little window holes. right? So then I could make tires and a bumper and all kinds of other stuff and draw things by hand and add to this or select the path and modify it. But you'll notice this shape now is a single shape. And I've used the Pathfinder to combine shapes. So that's worth playing with. And I'll hit delete. The Shape Builder tool can be an easy alternative to the Pathfinder panel. So if I draw shapes like this next to each other, select all of them, and I choose this, the Shape Builder tool right here, I can just go over all of them and kind of like drawing into them, and it combines them into a single shape. You can also use the Shape Builder tool to subtract from a shape. So you have to select both shapes, then use the Shape Builder tool, and then draw over just the single shape. So now when you've done that, you can move it and you've subtracted from the shape. If you've drawn two separate paths next to each other and you want to join them, you can use the Join tool. First I have the Pencil tool, and I'm drawing a shape like that. Then I'm going to I'll deselect it, and then I'll draw a separate shape next to it. So it looks like this is a closed path, but it's not. It's two separate shapes, right? And if I move them, you can see that they're two separate shapes. So if I select both of them and I pick the Join tool, it's in the same place in the Tools panel as the Shaper tool and the Pencil tool and the Smooth tool. And I just go over the point like this, where these two are together. Now I've made it into a single closed path that I can apply characteristics to easily and predictably. The Shaper tool is a new tool in Illustrator that's evolved from some of the iPad apps that were created by Adobe. And if you select the Shaper tool, you can draw a rough rectangle or square, and it turns into a square or rectangle. And if you are drawing shapes that are approximate, then this is a good tool to use. If you don't care about the exact measurements, you can quickly draw stuff. And you can also use it to create and combine shapes in different ways. For instance, if I select both of these shapes that I just drew, and then I use the Shaper tool, I make a scribbling motion to delete that. I'll make a scribbling motion to delete this, and I've created a combined shape fairly easily. So that concludes our introduction to Adobe Illustrator.